Mission command online. We have a go. Airlift inbound on DZ. All uplinks ID'd on radar.
I still want to know who has my socks, damn sock thieves!
Magnet here. All systems show green.
Yeah.
Deploy Scryer. Understood. Magnet here. All systems show green.
Damn, I forgot to dip.
Check Central Quadrant. Eyes on Badger IFVs.
Copy that. Outbound. Magnet here.
Check Foxtrot. Allied force has secured it. Allied forces engaged.
Move Scryer. Roger that.
Check Whiskey. Uplink has been secured by hostiles. Center Quadrant. Eyes on Cheetah gunships.
Repositioning MQ3.
Check Bravo. Allied force has secured it. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces in combat. Check Delta. Hostiles have taken it.
Waiting for orders.
Check Central Quadrant. Hostile neutralized. Check North Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer Rifle Platoon. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Check Central Quadrant. Allied unit calling for evac. Units entering the battle space. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
Move Scryer. Roger that.
This is 2-pair.
Hustle it up!
All squads vertical.
This is Bedpan. Pioneers deployed.
Yes, sir. In transit.
West Quadrant. Allied forces in combat.
This is 2-pair. All squads vertical.
Fear, use it as fuel.
All right, we have the enemy in sight. So do what I say, or I'll kill you myself.
You all happy to be here, people? You better be.
Affirmative.
It is on, people!
Yeah!
Get excited!
Check West Quadrant. Allied forces in combat.
You all happy to be here, people? You better be.
Another day of fighting for freedom, people! Get yourselves ready!
Check Yankee. Hostiles have taken it. Check South Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged.
Another
day in the force. Get ready to make history.
Two-pair here. We're in the building. Let it fly. Yes, sir.
You can do better than this, people!
Check Central Quadrant. Hostile neutralized. Allied forces in combat. Hostile neutralized.
We in the
Come
and
and
get it, you crap
All
heads!
squads vertical.
Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. We have units inbound on DZ.
You ever notice how we always end up in some random place getting shot at?
We have units inbound on DZ. Battlespace deployment is at maximum. South Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer combat engineers.
You
Booyah!
best check yourselves, troopers, because this is for real.
This is Short Fuse. All rollers ready for action.
Check Sierra. Hostiles have secured it.
This is Magnet. All systems show green.
Short Fuse here. All rollers ready for action.
This is Balder. Spartans ready to roll.
Check Bravo. Hostiles have taken it.
This is Stratcom. Kinetic strikes have been authorized. Repeat, rods from God authorized. Coordinates received.
Center Quadrant. High energy laser strike in progress. Check Alpha. Allied force has secured it. South Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Check Lima. Uplink has been secured by hostiles. Center Quadrant. Allied unit combat strength negligible. North Quadrant. Eyes on Cheetah gunships. Units entering the battle space. Battlespace deployment is at maximum. Check Unit 3. They'll get smashed.
Short Fuse here. This is Big Guns. All rollers factory manned.
Check Central Quadrant.
I'm
Eyes
not
on
picking up anything on these
AMG-26 infantry
optics.
fighting vehicles.
This is Odin. Spartans are good to go.
Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Allied forces deploying. We have units inbound on DZ.
Roger. Scry in transit.
North Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer rifle platoon.
Short Fuse here. Our fire has negligible effect.
West Quadrant. Allied forces in combat.
They're feeling it.
Big Guns here. Enemy is taking damage.
Check South Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged.
This is Strike Leader. Approaching target.
Check Central Quadrant. Hostile eliminated. Check Bravo. Allied force has secured it. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Check Central Quadrant. Eyes on Panther tanks.
Engage hostiles. Yes, sir.
Check Sierra. Allied force has secured it. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
On the move.
Check South Quadrant. Allied forces engaged.
They're feeling it.
Check North Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer Grenadiers.
Short Fuse here. That is a kill.
North Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged. Check West Quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
Engaging hostiles.
This is Big Guns.
It
All
is on,
rollers,
people!
factory
Get
men.
excited!
Hostile neutralized.
Short fuse here. All rollers ready for action.
North Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged. Hostile eliminated.
This is Smash Leader. Approaching target.
They're feeling it.
This is Big Guns. Hostiles are taking hits.
West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. We have units inbound on DZ. We are running low on reserves, sir. South Quadrant. Allied forces engaged.
Big Guns here.
Check North Quadrant. Allied unit out of the fight. Hostile neutralized.
Short fuse here. Engage hostiles. Copy.
Check Central Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer Commandos. Allied forces in combat. Check North Quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
We're engaging now.
West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. We have units inbound on DZ. Check Central Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged. Hostile neutralized.
This is short fuse. We got a kill, sir. This is short fuse. Hostiles are taking damage.
This is Big Guns. All rollers, factory men.
Hostile eliminated.
Short fuse here. We are engaging the enemy here.
Eyes on marksman artillery vehicles. Center Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged.
This is Smash Leader. Approaching target.
The enemy has exhausted his reserve, sir.
This is Big Guns. Engaging.
Hostile destroyed.
We're wiping them out! Keep at it!
North Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged.
This attack is botched!
Hostile neutralized.
We are engaging the hostiles. This is Big Guns.
Allied forces have been engaged. Check East Quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer combat engineers.
This is short fuse. Hostiles are taking damage.
Keep sweeping that horizon for contacts.
We are engaging the hostiles.
They're feeling it.
This is Big Guns. Hostiles are taking hits.
That's a victory, sir. The battle space is secure. That's what happens when you take siestas.
Operation Knife Thrust is go. Repeat, is go. Forward elements entering battle space. We have the uplinks on radar.
My mother would sing us to sleep over Moscow traffic noise.
Demagogue here. Running strong. Deploy TU-3. Da. This is Demagogue. Running strong.
Move in!
Get working. Seal this link.
Check center quadrant. Eyes on Panther tanks. Check Lima.
Listen to
Taken
me.
by hostiles.
Do what I tell you. Live to see your home again.
Check Foxtrot. Taken by allies.
Split the fame and dump GF and R.
Allies have been engaged.
Yeah! Light them up! Light them up! Bring it like wolves!
Okay, affirmative.
Keep it going! Good!
Slap them hard!
Affirmative. Engage.
Force feed them!
Check
Stay focused! Now! I'm hit here!
That was my shot!
Keep up them hard!
Check center quadrant. Allied
It is
units
time
calling
to
for
show the
evac.
world
West quadrant.
the fangs of
Hostile
Russian
destroyed.
wolves.
Allies are in combat.
Demagogue here. Running strong.
Check north quadrant. Eyes on enforcer commandos. Reinforcements are available. Check west quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Units entering the battle space.
This is Thunderhead. All beasts, no problems.
You feel your pulses race?
It.
Good. Good.
This is Caboose. Zukov's delivered.
Check Yankee. The hostiles have taken it. Check west quadrant. Allies are engaged.
We are wolves, but this prey has...
Da, on the way.
Check Sierra. Taken by allies. Transports ready to deliver reinforcements. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Check north quadrant. Eyes on Cheetah gunships.
We have made kill.
Check west quadrant. Allies engaged.
Thunderhead here.
Center quadrant. Eyes on Panther tanks. Check Alpha. Hostiles have secured it. West quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
Demagogue here. Running strong. Da, Vulture is moving. Move Vulture. Affirmative.
North quadrant. Allies are in combat. South quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer combat engineers.
In position.
Check north quadrant. Allies are engaged. Reinforcements ready to deploy. Check west quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Eyes on Enforcer Commandos. Units inbound on deployment zone. Battlespace deployment is at maximum.
This is Thunderhead. All beasts, no problems.
Deluge here. All beasts ready to fight.
Thunderhead here.
This is Tanker. Zhukov's on the ground.
This is Demogog.
This is Thunderhead.
Check center quadrant. Allies engaged. Check Bravo. Taken by allies. Check west quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Check Unit 2. They're in trouble.
We are scoring damage.
Da, hit them with Vulture.
Check Delta. Hostiles have secured it.
This is headquarters. You are cleared to use fuel-air explosive missile.
Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. They are using tactical high-energy laser.
Coordinates received.
Check center quadrant. Hostile destroyed. Check Unit 3. Extraction requested. Check Sierra. The hostiles have taken it. Center quadrant. Allies are in combat. Hostiles are deploying. Eyes on EC-660 Whirlwind.
This is Dmitri. Survivors loaded.
This is Ivan. We have them.
Check center quadrant. Eyes on Panther tanks.
This is Dmitri. We made it. Heading home.
This is Ivan. We got them out. Heading home.
Units inbound on deployment zone. Transports prepped to deploy. Check west quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Units inbound on deployment zone. Battlespace deployment is at maximum. East quadrant. Hostiles are deploying. Eyes on EC-220 Gadfly. Eyes on Cheetah gunships. Check center quadrant. Allied unit no longer effective.
This is Caboose. Zhukov's delivered.
This is Flatbed. Zhukov's on the ground.
Allies engaged.
This is Deluge. All beasts ready to fight. Affirmative. Crush them.
We are taking them apart!
Sledgehammer here. Attacking.
Northwest quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
Affirmative. Moving.
Center quadrant. Allies are in combat.
Attacking.
Check south quadrant. Eyes on Enforcer Grenadiers.
Enemy is taking damage. Sledgehammer here. Hostiles are taking hits. We have made kill.
Allies are engaged. Hostile neutralized. West quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on deployment zone. Center quadrant. Allied unit out of the fight. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
Enemy is taking damage.
This is Blowback. Locked on target.
West quadrant. Allies have been engaged. Check west quadrant. Hostile destroyed. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on deployment zone.
We are scoring damage. This is Sledgehammer. We are hurting them.
Check South Quadrant. Allies engaged. Hostile neutralized. Eyes on Badger IFVs. South Quadrant. Allies have been engaged. Check West Quadrant. Hostile destroyed. They beat us, Colonel. Europe didn't mess around today, Colonel. After action report for your review.
Operation Claudius is go. Repeat, Operation Claudius is go. Units entering the battle space. Radar positioning of uplinks is confirmed.
I wonder how my son is doing. He's 18 months.
Launch Eaglefly, oui. This is Voltaire. All systems show green.
Check center quadrant. Eyes on cockroach IFEs. Check Foxtrot. Secured by Allied force. Allied forces in combat.
Eaglefly repositioning.
Check Lima. Uplink secured by hostiles. East Quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz combat engineers.
Reposition Eaglefly, confirmed.
We're set. Let's get it
Check
done.
Whiskey. Hostiles have secured uplink. Check center quadrant. Hostile neutralized.
I have achieved a all new level of 8 for this situation.
Have we
And on
received
that
fresh
bombshell.
lies? I mean, orders?
Transports prepped to deploy. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying.
Today we
Units
show
entering
them
the
how
battle
it's
space.
done.
Units entering the battle space.
Strained so hard
Don't
in the
be telling
latrine,
me
I thought
that.
I was going to pop a vein.
Check Sierra. Secured by Allied force. Transports prepped to deploy. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
This little baby is ready to lose some death.
This is Fermi. Marksman on the ground.
Check Yankee. Hostiles have secured it. Center Quadrant. Allied forces in combat. Check North Quadrant. Eyes on King Spider Command Support Vehicle.
We are opening fire at hostiles.
Reinforcements are available. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Center Quadrant. Eyes on T-100 Ogre tanks. Check North Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Check center quadrant. Hostile neutralized.
Jawohl. Engage.
North quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged. Check center quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz bears. Check Alpha. Secured by Allied force.
We're scoring damage.
Allied unit. Combat strength negligible. Eyes on Russian conscripts.
Mangonel here. All machines running smooth.
Allied forces in combat. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Units inbound on the Z. Battle space deployment is at maximum. North Quadrant. Allied unit destroyed.
We are opening fire at hostiles.
Allied forces have been engaged. Check center quadrant. Hostile eliminated. Eyes on KA-65 Howler gunships.
This is Fermi. Marksman on the ground.
We are opening fire at hostiles.
Check Unit 2. They're in danger.
This attack is foolish!
North Quadrant. Allied unit. Combat strength negligible.
Starting attack. One machine firebolt. Enemy is taking damage.
Check center quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz wolves. Check Unit 2. Losing effectiveness.
They're chewing us up!
Check Bravo. Secured by Allied force. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z. Check Unit 2. Evac requested.
This is Dvorak. Inbound to extraction.
Allied forces in combat.
This is Dvorak. All survivors are loaded. Lifting off now. This is Dvorak. Survivors loaded. Outbound.
Center Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged.
Scoring hits, Central.
Check Unit 3. They're at risk. Eyes on Spetsnaz bears. Check center quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Allied unit, combat strength negligible. Transports ready to deliver reinforcements. West quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z.
You're butchering us!
Units entering the battle space. Battle space deployment is at maximum. Check center quadrant. Eyes on King Spider command support vehicle. Check Unit 3. Extraction requested.
This is Bitsy. Inbound to extraction.
Check center quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Check Delta. Secured by Allied force.
This is Bitsy. Survivors on board and we are lifting off.
This is Curie. Badgers delivered.
Check center quadrant. Allied forces engaged.
This is Bitsy. Survivors loaded. Outbound.
Check North Quadrant. Eyes on KA-65 Howler gunships.
Fantastico, Central.
West Quadrant. Allied forces in combat. Reinforcements are available. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space. Hostile destroyed.
T, moving. Nina
First
here.
sign of tech
All
problems,
machines
tell
running
me.
smooth.
Check Sierra. Uplink secured by hostiles. Check Northwest Quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz Wolves. East Quadrant. Allied forces in combat.
Sí, Central. Excelente. I think we can do this.
Hostile eliminated.
I think we can do this.
Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged.
Yeah,
Check
that's
Unit
it.
2.
We
They'll
are
take
doing
losses. Center Quadrant. Allied unit incapacitated. East Quadrant. Hostiles are deploying. Eyes on Mi-80 Tarantula. Reinforcements are available. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
One machine firebolt.
East Quadrant. Hostiles are deploying. Eyes on Mi-55 Locust. Eyes on KV-20 Zukov artillery vehicles.
This is Tempest. Approaching target.
Check East Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Center Quadrant. Hostile eliminated.
We've lost 2 machines.
Check Unit 2. Suppressed by enemy fire. Check Northwest Quadrant. Hostile eliminated.
We will try.
Center Quadrant. Allied forces have been engaged. Check Yankee. Secured by Allied force. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z. Check Center Quadrant. Allied unit no longer effective. Air command signal confidence downgraded. Check East Quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
They're trashing us.
North Quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz combat engineers. Transports fueled and ready to deploy. Allied forces are engaged. Units entering the battle space. Battle space deployment is at maximum.
This is Niemann. We are at the limit, Central.
Who ordered this attack?
Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Check East Quadrant. Hostiles deploying.
This attack's a waste of time, Central.
Center Quadrant. Hostile eliminated.
This is Fermi. Panthers on the ground.
North Quadrant. Allied unit out of the fight. East Quadrant. Eyes on King Spider command support vehicle. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z. We are running low on reserves, Colonel. Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces engaged. East Quadrant. Hostiles are deploying.
On the way.
This is Niemann. We are at the limit, Central.
Confirmed. Engage.
Check Unit 2. Bad engagement. Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces engaged. Hostile destroyed.
This is Jungfrau. Attack is effective. Easy kill, Central.
This is Niemann. They are engaging. We've got nothing left. Extract now! Straight away!
This is Bitze. Inbound to extraction.
This is Jungfrau.
Check East Quadrant. Allied forces engaged. Hostile destroyed.
Confirmed. Engage. In a transit, Central.
Check Northeast Quadrant. Eyes on KA-65 Howler gunships. Center Quadrant. Fuel air missile detonation imminent.
This is Space Command Europa. Orbital laser strike authorized for your sector.
This is Bit A. Survivors on board and we are lifting off.
East Quadrant. Allied unit lost. Check Center Quadrant. Allied unit calling for evac. Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battle space.
This is Jungfrau.
Hostiles deploying. Eyes on Mi-55 Locust. Allied unit wiped out. We have lost 3 units.
This is Bit A. Survivors loaded. Outbound.
Check Unit 3. They're in trouble. Units inbound on the Z. Battlespace deployment is at maximum.
We made a kill.
Check West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units entering the battlespace. We are running low on reserves, Colonel. East Quadrant. Hostiles are deploying. Center Quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
This is Cyclone. Approaching target.
East Quadrant. Eyes on Spetsnaz rifle platoon.
On the way. Sì, non c'è un problema.
In transit central. Jawohl, confirmed.
Check Yankee. Hostiles have secured it.
We're engaging.
Eyes on Russian conscripts.
Affirmative. Engage.
Sì, sort them.
Check Unit 2. They're in trouble. West Quadrant. Allied forces deploying. Units inbound on the Z. Our reserves are exhausted, Colonel.
Jawohl. Flatten them.
Allied forces have been engaged.
Jungfrau here.
This is Titanium. Hostiles are taking hits.
We're wiping the floor with them!
Titanium here. We have 2 birds down. Mayday, going down. Need extraction.
Check Unit 2. Evac requested. Check East Quadrant. Hostile eliminated.
This is Brahms. Inbound to extraction.
Check West Quadrant. Allied forces are engaged. Check East Quadrant. Hostiles deploying. Eyes on Mi-80 Tarantula. Check Center Quadrant. Hostile neutralized.
This is Brahms. Survivors on board and we are lifting off.
Check East Quadrant. Eyes on T-100 Ogre tanks.
This is Tempest. Approaching target.
Hostiles are deploying. Hostiles deploying. Center Quadrant. Allied forces in combat.
This is Brahms. Survivors loaded. Outbound.
One machine lost.
That's it!
Check
That's
Center
the
Quadrant.
business!
Hostile eliminated. Hostile destroyed.
We have a man down!
Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces engaged. North Quadrant. Hostile destroyed.
Jungfrau here. 2 machines have been destroyed.
They're taking hits!
Check Unit 3. Suppressed by enemy fire.
Morale is in a bad shape. We're crushed. Send evac.
Check Unit 3. Evac requested.
This is Bit A. Inbound to extraction.
Check Center Quadrant. Allied forces engaged. The enemy has no reserves left, Colonel. Northeast Quadrant. Hostiles are deploying. Eyes on Mi-55 Locust.
This is Bit A. Survivors on board and we are lifting off.
The enemy has no reserves left, Colonel. Center Quadrant. Allied forces in combat. Allied unit. Combat strength negligible.
This is Bit A. Survivors loaded. Outbound.
This is Handel. Archers deployed.
This is Cyclone. Approaching target.
Hostile eliminated. Check Sierra, secured by Allied force. West Quadrant, Allied forces have been engaged. West Quadrant, Allied forces have been engaged. Center Quadrant, eyes on Spetsnaz combat engineers. Check Yankee, secured by Allied force.
I could be wasting this time at home.
Allied forces engaged.
The air is bad in here.
Center Quadrant, eyes on Russian conscripts.
Did you just crack one off?
They are defeated, Colonel. The battle space is ours. So much for the legendary Spetsnaz.